Hey, this is Matt Cox, and I am what happened?
And this is Isaac. Do I introduce myself or no?
I was gonna say
this is my first. This is my first time, so you got to tell me what to and not to do. All right, yeah, okay. Please, easy.
So
kiss me first.
Yeah, just the tip. Okay, so Isaac. This is Isaac Allen, and he goes by Zack.
Zack.
And
that was my street name. Yes. It's so tough for a black guy named Zack. It really is. So one of them hard names, you know.
So. Okay. So So basically, you're basically a fraudster. Is that what you're?
That's my unofficial title. That'd be unofficial.
So basically, a fraudster. You've been locked up multiple times. How many times have you been locked up in prison? In state or federal?
I've locked up probably about 8 times.
In state or federal or both?
Well, I've only locked up one time in federal, multiple time in state. So you know,
because the state gives you the little sentences.
That's right. They give you. They're the ones that they set you up for the home run. You know what I'm saying?
So all right. So what were all the different charges you've been charged with?
Most of them were like credit card fraud. Like lying, misstatements, like identity theft.
Right, like lying on an application.
Yes, so, false swearing, you know. Like if you get a driver's license and give them bad information, they call that false swearing. You know, false swearing to me is frigging. You know, use the word frigging, right. That's a false swear.
He cracks himself up.
I do. I crack myself. But you know, like what is a false swearing? You know, like I solemnly do
what's
swear.
Aggravated identity theft?
I don't know.
How does it become aggravated identity theft?
Well, it's like you raped the identity off of them. That's what it is.
All right. So basically, we're not gonna tell your story today. We're just gonna talk about because we're basically working on writing an outline of Zack's story.
Correct.
Which is a super cool story, by the way. But you know, like most stories, it goes here, and then you have to be able to kind of say, okay, well, that's interesting, but it doesn't further the overall story. So we're structuring that we're writing up an outline, then I'm gonna write a whole story. But in the meantime, we end up having just a ton of different similar stories involve similar stories, and there's just all these separate stories, and then every time we end up having a conversation about something, it ends up being like an hour or 2 hours, and it goes, well, how'd you do that? Well, I don't understand. What happened here? Right. So I thought that would make a cool podcast, like just two fraudsters, or you know, I would say con man, because nobody knows what a fraudster is, you know, like
What about scam artists? So the names are con man.
I don't want to say, hey, my name's Matt Cox, I'm a scammer. It's con man's better. Con man sounds classy.
But what about a scam artist?
Artist. That sounds to me skeezy. That sounds like a guy that does like the 3-card Monte. You know, that's a scam artist. That's a scam artist. It's like a street.
Well, it gives you the artist title, which means you're creative. So a fraudster sounds like a super villain. You know, like, this is the fraudster.
But con man.
But
con man sounds like to me, a con man is someone who can. To me, con men run like long cons. Like but like scam artists do like short cons. They do like 3-card Monte, or they pick your pocket. They do something.
Well, con man sounds like swindling someone.
Right.
You know, whereas like, okay, so a schemer, because I got a lot of different names. I got like schemer, you know, co-schemers, because they listed it like co-schemers, fraudster, and a scammer. You know, so they gave me multiple names. So when I look at that, I always wondered.
Did you ever get mastermind? I got mastermind several times in the newspaper. Mastermind.
Actually, mine was yes, massa mine.
No,
but
it's gonna turn into a whole Black Lives Matter.
No, not a Black Lives, but I just thought I'd throw that joke in there. Yes, massa mine. But
go ahead.
Right, sorry, but no, I didn't get. I got like the head of the scheme, or the guy in charge, ringleader. That was the term, and that's circuses. circusy to me. You know, like because like a fraud ring,
Right.
You know what I mean? What
Makes
is
it sound
that?
like tons of people. It could be like 3 people, but they make it sound like a fraud ring could be. What you're saying, circusy, like like you're the clown.
Watch as he makes your watch disappear.
This has already gone bad.
Yes. All right.
Yeah,
So-
go ahead. So,
No,
so
but-
what would you say? I say con man. What do you say?
I'd say scam artists. I would.
but I've
It was
heard
mostly
you're-
scams.
I've heard your. What's going on? Okay. Yeah, but your stuff to me that seems short, like a short con. To your scams, although they were quick, like you didn't do anything that lasted. You didn't run any, as far as I know from knowing your story. You didn't do any scams that lasted 6 months. It was always like you get the credit card, you go out, you run out the credit card, and it's like within a few days it's over.
Right.
Like,
For a particular victim or a particular person or whatever we were doing, it was always something we were doing to get money.
Right.
So it was a return of money. So it's an idea that returns money, and which is to me is a scam. Con artist is to me is always talking someone out of money.
Right.
Like to me, the con is getting someone to legitimately hand you money, whereas a scam is to kind of take their rules and use it
agree.
against them.
I agree, but I mean, I agree with you, but I always say con man because that's what people know. Like
Okay.
if you say scammer, you know, to me, scammers are people that do something on the computer. You know,
Yeah.
a scam artist or a con artist or a scam artist is somebody that's, you know, it's a short con, it's a very quick con. And a con man is somebody that does a long con. Like, and even though all of those are interchangeable, whatever, we're getting off topic.
All right.
The point is, two things. One, try not to shake the desk
Oh, my fault.
because my mic's gonna bang into me.
was it?
Secondly, so I thought we would just talk about different types of scams.
Okay.
So, like, I was gonna, for instance, you were doing one of the scams you were doing was we'll talk about the wasn't me scam, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay. You want to say that for last? or
Oh,
something?
because I love that's my favorite scam. My favorite scam. He called he wasn't me. This wasn't me scam, and I love that scam. You know, if you can love a scam, which I can love any scam. So, did you ever do the tax scam?
What do you mean by tax
The,
scam?
what they call it, the drop? Did you ever do that on like, you know, where you get someone's information and you file taxes on for them prior to? Because that's huge. Was huge.
I dealt with some people who did stuff like that, but that was never my forte. I was kind of always able to assist in that, but I was never like in the midst of that.
Right.
So that kind of operated tangentially, you know, whatever I had going on.
So
that never stopped me from getting caught up and accused of it. But
Right. Well, what
it was
about-
a tangentially occurring. I'm witnessing as it's going on, and somehow I got accused of being the person putting it together.
What about you just can't stop jiggling this thing.
Oh, I can't. Let me get up off of it.
So, so what about what so your credit card scams were what?
They varied from getting card numbers and the simple of ordering items with card numbers or buying stuff with card numbers.
Right.
One time, what we did was I had access to thousands of card numbers, and for money, what I did was I would pay people's bills.
Right.
With stolen card numbers and just get half of what the bill is. So if you had a $200 electric bill, I'm like, look, I'll pay it with a fraudulent card number, and then you just give me $100. You know, never thinking of the consequences that came behind that for the person. You know, it's like, so now you end up paying $300, but hey, in the short term, your lights will be back on. You know what I'm saying? Let's do the here and now. Let's think about the here and now.
What was the other one? The other one was I know a good one was the rental car thing.
Oh.
The rental car is because the security guy. But tell us what happened. What were you doing?
All right. Well, so that's why so let me just say this first. That's why I use the term scam. Why I have different labels, because to me a scam is using their rules against them.
Right.
Because all organizations, all financial transactions go by certain patterns, and they have things in place for security.
Right.
But usually there's a gaping hole in there that I kind of exploit to use against them. So what I was able to do is use the rental car's convenience of returning customers or gold ring or preferred or the rental aisle for national, using those convenience they gave the customers against them. What I found is that if you rented a car and I had access to someone that made fake IDs, right? I could actually book your rental car twice. So if you rented a car for like 3 days, I could take your reservation and reset it again and make it for 3 weeks, like 2 days after you rented a car. And then if I had a fake ID that kind of matched your driver's license number, I could pick that car up and rent it.
And
So
you drive the car for 3 weeks.
drive the car for 3 weeks. And all I would do is just use your gold ring or your preferred service, the convenience of just picking the car up. And what's so funny is I pick it up from the same location you picked it up from.
Who was this through?
All of them.
Okay.
Hertz, Avis. I had a penchant for Hertz, and and which turned into Hertz having a penchant for me.
So real quick. So where were the credit cards? So how are you figuring out that this customer has a gold? What did you call it?
I myself was a gold member.
Okay.
And what I realized is when I would go and I'd pick up my car, when I would take the tag that was in the window, because what would happen is when I would drive out, the guy would look at my license, look at the tag, and then hand me the tag back, or hand me both of them back. So I said, well, what is he looking at? So when I look, he's looking at the last 4 digits of my driver's license number. The credit card and all that stuff's on file is irrelevant. So because I have a credit card on file, if I rebook a reservation, it'll use the same credit card, right? And all I would need to get out with the car is an ID that had the last 4 digits of my number. So that I told myself, I'm like, so if I duplicate, because I started out only really doing one state, I only could have California. So what we would do is we would go to the Hertz lot at like 9 p.m. and walk around the gold aisle ring and look, okay, hey, here's a renter from California. Last 4 is 3879.
Right.
You know, and so we'd write that down, get a ID with that person's name, and the last 4 is 7849. And then now I can pick up a car the next day for 2 weeks.
Okay. And what were you doing with it? How are you making money on that?
I'm renting them out to people who, street pharmacists who couldn't get rental cars themselves and wanted to look fly.
So drug dealers renting Escalades.
Yes. So they'd say, hey, I'll give you $700 if you can. Absolutely. So then I'd loan it out to them. So what happened was that was so easy and so exploited that when it all came crashing down, the guy goes, you know, you had 60 vehicles of mine out from one location.
Who's the guy? I know who the guy is.
Yes.
Right. So what happened? You got a phone call?
Actually there was, so this was an addiction. This became to where I no longer went and got the cars. People who were giving it to dealers, like the phone is ringing, business was booming. So I no longer went and got it. So I hired people to get it to go pick up the cars. So what happened is my hirees, you know, they had trouble in one spot. So I said, okay, let's go here. Okay, right. They had trouble there. And I said, okay, let's go here. So we just expanded and keep picking up cars. So at one place, I guess they got hip and they arrested them.
Right. So
once they got arrested, they called me up and I asked them what's going on. And I said, what have you told them? They said, I haven't told them nothing. What, as John Gordon would tell you, they misspoke. What they meant to say was, there's nothing I haven't told them.
It's a double negative.
That's right. So I guess they told them who I was and gave them my number. So the person called me.
The head of security.
The head of security
for who?
For the national for Hertz called me, and I'm on the phone. He was very nice.
Right.
So he goes, listen, I'm gonna make. He made me a deal. He didn't even know who I was.
Right.
So
he knew you were the ringleader.
Yes. as you would call it.
Right.
So he told me, he said, all right. He was very cordial. So when he called me something. He didn't have my name. I went by Zack, but he called me Black or Tack. It was something similar. So he's like, he goes, hey, I know what you're doing. I said, really? What am I doing? He said, you've got a person on the inside of my company that's giving you information and exploiting our customers.
Right.
He says,
but you don't. That's not true.
I didn't at all.
Right.
So he said, I'm going to make you a deal. He said, if you give that person up, I guarantee you immunity, that you will not be arrested or charged in this case.
You can't even do that.
And so I'm saying, well, I mean, I thought about it. I'm thinking
Yeah.
to myself, well, I'll call in tomorrow and say, can I speak with Betty? Betty, what's your last name? Betty, I hope you don't have kids that need you. But anyway, so he asked me if I would give that person up, right? And I told him I absolutely would not. So
You didn't say I don't have anybody?
no, I didn't. Like, I was amazed that he thought I had someone on the inside, and I said, I'm not going to give him up.
Right.
Then he said, well, I'm going to find you and I'm going to prosecute you to the full extent of the law. He goes, you're going to make a mistake. And I told him, I said, no, because I'm
Had
done.
that same conversation.
I said,
with
I'm
the
done.
FBI.
I'm done doing that is what I told him. I'm done with that completely. So, and I gave that up. I was done. I never touched Hertz after that.
Yeah, but what happened? You forgot the part where you gave him a name or something? You said what your name was? And he went to the prison?
Well, see, here's the funny part. Well, it gets explicit because like I was using a name of a buddy of mine that I met in jail, right? And I was actually legitimately renting a car, right? So I had another friend that needed to rent a car legitimately. I said, well, look, we're going to do it legit. So I said, what I'll do is I'll make you an ID
That's
under.
legit.
Yeah.
That sounds legit.
Well, that was my version of
Yeah.
legit. So I said, look, I'll make you an ID with the name I've been using to rent a car, and they'll just put it on my little $1,000 secure card.
Right.
So I gave him an ID under my name. He was white, I was black. So when he went to pick up a car, they harassed him. And then the next day I went to pick up a car and they harassed me. So the guy that called said, well, there's a couple of people playing this guy.
Right.
You got a white guy and a black guy. So he's like, what's going on? So what he did though, because my friend was still in prison, he went to the prison and interrogated my friend. Actually, he interrogated him pretty bad.
The security, the head of
Head of security
went to the prison and interrogated the guy, saying, "We know this." And
Yeah, like how did that guy get your information?
and he had no idea.
He had no idea. Well, I mean, he was a friend, so, what do friends do? Friends steal friends' identity.
Listen, I was friends with a guy named Scott Cugno who
And-
stole his identity.
Yeah, I
and
mean,
cashed about $400,000 in his name. He had some
friends,
questions.
I know, scam. So we say scammers, we steal friends' identities. We love you.
When they showed up at Scott's house, they showed him my picture, and he goes, "That's Matt Cox."
Really?
They said immediately. They said he just cashed like $400,000 in your name, and he goes, "I'll tell you right now, he's gonna be hard to catch." And it was like, "You're not helping me at all."
That's Matt Cox.
Yeah, they said, "Do you know this person?" Yes, I do. But anyway, so. Yeah, that's the part I always thought was funny.
Hey,
They
but-
actually went to the prison. The guy from Hertz was. They
was-
must have been
Listen.
losing a ton of money.
Yeah, listen, 65 cars. Like an average Hertz car was 40 grand. This is back in 2006.
So these guys aren't bringing the cars back.
No, they were keeping them. They went out and listen. The whole experience was nerve wracking because I had so many people out with cars. Like they would tell me that the police would surround the car. They would low jack the car. The police would surround the car and wait. Right. So 2 police officers pulled up in these people's yard driveway and just parked by the car, waited. They're on the phone with me in the house, ducked down. Like the police are out there, man. I don't know what they're going to do. The police were waiting for the wrecker to come, load up the car and leave. Then the police left. And they're like, what happened? They go, the police left.
They got their car back.
So I started getting calls like that every day. Hey, man, the police are outside surrounding the car. I'm
Is
like,
this
yeah.
at the last 3 weeks? Like, they don't look for it for like 3 weeks, right?
Somehow they identified all the cars that were out
At some point.
improperly.
Okay.
Yeah, they started tracing what was going on. And I think what it was is all my rentals were 3 weeks and above. So let's start with all the
that's a
3
long
week
time for a
rentals.
rental,
Yeah, let's start with the 3 week, and they just start tracing the cars. Hey, did you rent this? No. And then they like, hey, go get our shit.
Right.
So then they start going out and picking up their car. It was a troubling time. It was about a month and a half period wind down.
Right.
And that's why I gave my friend that ID. I said, look, we're not going to do it the old way. We're going to do it like this. Just take this ID and rent a car as the guy I've been using. Really, which kind of threw him off because he's like, man, there's two people. There's a black and a white guy doing that. Right. You know, what the hell's going on? So.
Right. What was the, what was the other one? God, we talked about this
Of course,
one.
of course, you got me here all prepared and ready to go.
I mean, I was thinking about, we were talking about, didn't we have talked about creating fake identities at one point? Like,
well, I think that was more your spiel. I wasn't into the creating them. You know,
right.
I used to borrow them from close by associates when I was locked up.
You had what was the one scam you told me about, which was it getting corporate checks? You were getting corporate checks, and
yes.
then you would go open a bank account in the name of the corporation.
Yes.
You just change it a little bit, and
yes.
then you deposit the check.
Yes.
How did that work? I love this one.
Well,
all right, I think I could tell you the whole. I can tell you the whole story.
But I think you just did.
I mean, yeah, but you got to explain the whole, like, you know, there are these industrial parks,
right,
and you would go there, and you would the mail would get dumped into like a big
bin, one of the big lock boxes
that's outside,
right.
So it's just like when you drop your mail off to the post office and you stick it in there. They would have these big boxes that somebody like, let's say, Coca-Cola would go to pay their vendors, and they would go and they would dump all these checks. This is back when it wasn't electronic. They dump a bunch of checks into this into this box holder, and then the postman would come. Okay. So you would get, so they would dump all the mail into the main bin, and then the postman would come and unload it for the whole park.
Right.
And how were you guys getting that? So you guys were going and doing what?
We were taking the checks out of the bin, or we had mailbox like retrievers where we could get down into the box, or like we would jimmy the box open and steal the mail out of it. So anyway, we had access to various companies' checks. And one of them, we had one of the large supermarkets that wrote a check to, we had an inside person that worked in Kellogg's that was going to get us a $2 million check that I was planning on getting. And I was priming that and everything, getting that ready to go. But basically what I would do would just, like, if I got a check in for, like, let's say Matt Cox Industries payable to Zack Silverware, then I would just start a company with like Zack's Fine Silverware close to the name.
Right. And
then just put the check in the account with that name and deposit it. Because what will happen is when the check clears, you're expecting the check to clear.
Right. And then the real company, they just haven't gotten it yet.
Right.
So they're expecting to get it any day now, and
right.
they just haven't gotten it yet.
And the larger companies can wait, or they just carry the balance over from 30 to 60 days and say, hey. And so, like, if I deal with you monthly, what will happen is you'll just have a running balance.
Right.
So if every month you're paying me like $400 to $1,000, then you're just going to have a balance. So every month you're going to pay, you're going to have, and sooner or later I'm like, what the hell's going on, man? Are you going to ever catch that up? I mean, what's on the missing check that you have?
What was the biggest one you ever did?
60,000.
60,000. So what were the averages? 5,000, 2,000,
yeah.
500?
No,
then you had one.
5,000 would be if it was $5,000, if it was less than 5, I wouldn't touch it. So we had one for 60 bands. We had one income tax that was 100,000, but we didn't cash that one. But yeah, it's just in like roofing companies. We had a roofing company, and they got paid a tremendous amount of money. So it depends on what each company do. That's kind of hard today because everything's ACH, draft transfer. But back in the day,
yeah.
it was all checks. It was beautiful. I mean, that's not one of the most sexy type. That's just and again, that's a scam. That's just manipulating the system to get around it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you and I had vastly different.
Well, mine aren't as sexy and elaborate and long, strong,
I
on the
think,
run. Mine were not on the run.
Well,
I was buying houses and cars. I was doing mine like a job. So
mine was a job. It was a job. Yeah, it's some. When I stopped owning the mortgage company, when I ended up on probation, like that, it became my full-time job. Like I was making fake people. I was borrowing money from the bank. I was, that's all I did. I mean, I flipped houses. I'm always doing something. I'm always doing 5 or 6 things.
Right. But I don't think I think you worked it to get a certain amount, and then you take that certain amount, and then you did what you wanted to do with it. I don't think that was this was my day-to-day income. It's like, okay, you guys need, and I had people, you guys need to do this because I need to bring this in because I got houses.
A whole enterprise. You were running multiple people.
Yes.
Most of the time it was just me. And maybe I have this guy to help do this. Maybe he knew, maybe he didn't. Maybe this guy knew, and one or two. But it was never like 8 different people or 10 different people all juggling all these different people. It was never really like, and they were all committing crimes. Most of the people I was dealing with were just doing what they normally do. They were, this guy's an appraiser.
Exactly.
Appraise the house. This guy's a realtor. Give me a contract. So most of the time they know something's up, but they're doing what they normally do. Your whole thing is, you're actually committing, everybody knows it's a scam. Everybody's running different scams, different.
Right.
I love the one where you told me that you had the guy that was cashing checks for you, and you were like, he told me that the guy all he had to do was like go in and cash a check for, I forget the amount, but it's like go in and cash this check for $5,000. We have 8 checks.
Yes. You're talking about the guy that, he was at Coleman with me, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yes.
He was going to make, by the end of the day, he would make he was going to make like $20,000 or something.
Right.
And instead,
he cashed the one check,
got $5,000.
$5,000, right? And I'm like, okay, you're going to bring me the money. I'm on the phone with him. So I'm going, hey, did you drop that money in that account? He's like, no, I haven't had a chance to yet. I'm like, but you cashed the check 2 hours ago. Yeah, I'm going to do it. So, I'm like, all right, just drop it in there, bro, and then I'm going to shoot you the next check.
Right.
And so like I go, I've got 6 of them, so you're going to make about $25,000. Okay, I got you. So call him back. I'm like, dude, so I'm asking him after the 3rd time I called him, I said, hey, look, I said, you're not going to drop that check, are you? Silence. Wow. Nah. He goes, man, $5,000, man.
$5,000, you're gonna make 25,000 by the end of the day.
Yeah, he's like, man, I ain't had $5,000 in forever. That's what he's telling me.
You're never, with that attitude, you'll never have $25,000.
Exactly.
Never.
Exactly. I told him, I said, enjoy it.
I mean, what about, you told me one time one guy went in the bank, cashed a check, walked out, and was supposed to come to the car.
Yes, and he took off running.
So walked out, looked over and saw Zack in the.
Well, I
just took off.
I used to
You're
deal.
You're going to make like $25,000. Just come back to the car. We'll go to the next bank.
It works. I worked with drug dealers, so they would give me addicts. So addicts are hard to maintain. And so everyone that worked with me, that like upper echelon, my wife and the guy that helped me makes the photo ID, all of them were like, why do you deal with addicts? Because I'm like, if they could just hold it together long enough, we'll make a fortune. So how long would you deal with somebody when they're worth $100,000 to you? They're like, I think I deal with a lot.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But, addicts are just kind of like, I can't hold it together. I'm sorry. Sometimes they apologize. Like that's what the guy told me. I'm sorry, man. I can't wait around for the $20,000. I got to use this 5 right now.
Ridiculous.
Makes sense. I mean,
you can't
go get your high
till the end of the day. You can't hold your shit together.
You can't.
The end of the day.
I'm sorry, man. I'm just. I know you're never gonna fuck with me again, but I got to go get high. $5,000. Like, hey, go get it. Go get it.
Because he's my favorite scam is the What Me scam. Like it's great. So
I have to give
you have to give a little bit of explain this, how it kind of like it went from, you remember you met the guy at like Shoney's. It was like that you knew somebody who knew somebody at Bank of America. Like start at that point. And how you were trying to do one scam and this guy put you on to the bigger one, and then how you were getting the people, the whole thing.
Well, all right. So
like I can tell when we're just talking, you tell me all the details. You're like trying to jump through it right now. It doesn't matter if we talk for fucking 4 hours. The longer the better.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't. This is my first time,
yeah,
so I got to keep saying that this is my first time. So, all right. So, the explanation is that we were dealing with I want to call homosexuals, if I may say, and we were buying credit card numbers from them. And so, because one guy worked at the bank and in the fraud department. Nice. So what was bizarre about it is when we bought the numbers, like they'd call up, and I think we were paying $50 a number, and they'd have like 20 numbers. So we we meet them with $3,000 or $6,000, and we always paid. So they always hi. They were very nice to my wife. They loved her. So anyway, every time he'd meet us, he would say, "Park over here." And I'm going to get out of my car and walk all the way over, but there's somebody in my car. So, and I'm like, well, why can't we just park next to you? Oh, because my boyfriend in the car works in the fraud department. He doesn't want to be seen. Like he doesn't want them to get pictures of him meeting us. So I said, what? He goes, yeah, my boyfriend works at the fraud department.
Right. So the guy you were buying from, he didn't. He worked at the bank, but not in the fraud department.
Right.
Fraud department. Okay.
Or I think he worked at a hotel. So they were both bouncing off. He works at the fraud department. So I asked him, I said, listen, tell your boyfriend I'll pay him $5,000 if he would just give me 1 hour to just ask him about the bank. Right. He's like, really? I go, yeah, I'll give him $5,000 if I can sit down and talk to him for an hour. So I made him the offer and he accepted it. So we sat down one day and I'm asking him all the fantasy, because I had fantasy questions and I had them written down, like about 25, like front and back. And I'm going through all of I'm thinking this, and if I'm writing this check, what's the policy on this? What's the policy? And he's like, no, that wouldn't work because of da-da-da-da. He's answering them all honestly. So we met about an hour. So as he kills most of what I have down, I'm writing notes and everything. So my last question is there something that you notice that's a loophole that I didn't ask you, right? And he said, well... He goes, one day I had a guy who called me up and went to the ATM machine and got $1,000 out of the ATM machine with the PIN number, right? And he was telling me that it wasn't him that got the money. But I'm like, but that's an ATM machine that gets used like every Thursday right next to your house, right, religiously.
By you.
Right.
Right.
But you're telling me
this time it wasn't me.
Yeah.
Right.
The guy got angry and said, listen, if I tell you I didn't take the money out, I didn't take the effing money out. So he said, I gave him the money back. And I didn't catch it. But I said, what do you mean? He's like, that's bank policy. He says, the first time anything is taken from you, our policy is we give you the money back, regardless of whether we believe you or not, whether it can be proven that it might have been you. He said the first time we absolutely do it. The second time, if we're suspicious, we'll still give you the money back, but we'll close your account.
Right. But that's actually also, that's the EFT policy from the federal government.
I didn't learn that until I was in prison.
Right. But they have to give it back to you.
Right.
Like
that concept of it being the law came to me when I was in prison.
Right.
So when he told me that, I'm like, So when we were leaving, like it's processing in my head, and I turned to my wife and I'm like, did you hear what he said? And she's like, no, I was drinking cocktail. So I said, he basically said that if we pull money out of our Bank of America account and you tell the bank that
wasn't you, right,
they would give the money back. She goes, you think it'll work? I'm like, let's give it a shot. So we left. This was it was a Tuesday morning or lunchtime. I forgot when it was. It was the day that he was off. And we left there, went to the post office and bought $4,000 worth of cashier checks where you could use your debit card. Money orders. Yeah, money orders. and they gave us the $4,000 worth of money orders, right? And so my wife, where she opened the account, she was very close because she talked to the lady. We left the post office, went straight to her bank, and she went in and she talked to the lady that opened her account and said, hey, somebody got $4,000 transaction. So the lady looked, oh, I'm sorry. She cut up her card, processed her account, said, look, I ordered you another card. It'll be here tomorrow overnight. You'll get it tomorrow, right? And I went ahead and put the $4,000 back in your account. So you're good to go.
Nice.
So
I
look at her.
She got the $4,000 in money orders.
Right.
And she got the $4,000 back. So
right.
she just made $4,000.
Right. And so you know what my wife did? She signed the four $1,000 money orders and deposited in the account with
in the
lady.
same account.
I'm like, that's
either ballsy or stupid.
It's ballsy. You're like, hey, stroke them. You're talking to. So
what happened?
So we went outside.
It expands from there.
Right. So we went outside, high five, went straight to the house, had sex, and like it's on. So it was on. So my mind's running. So that's what we do. So I said, okay, so let's open up accounts and we'll pull the money and say it wasn't me. Now, when you do it in the same city, when it's feasible that it wasn't you, and sometimes the bank would give a little blowback.
Right.
I found people buckled. So, because it wasn't ever me doing all that. So I would hire dope addicts, reliable dope addicts. And when they got a little flack, they folded like Superman on laundry day.
So when they got a little bit of money.
No, they got a little flack.
I don't know what's. Okay. Oh, when they got when the
right
bank,
when the bank would be like, hold up, like
okay.
like hey, somebody took.
This doesn't make sense. Something's wrong here.
Yeah, like let me go talk to somebody. Go, oh no, never mind. I think my wife did it. I'm out of here. Don't worry about it. You know what I'm saying? Right. So when they got a little hassle, they bend. They would give in, or they would leave, or I'm like, what happened? Oh, they know it wasn't, like,
right. Yeah. Like that. That was the big thing with me. Like I'm ready to argue. Like as soon as whenever the bank would ever start to give me a hard time, I would immediately say, all right, I want to talk to the manager. All right, no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
No, look, I don't know what you're thinking, but I mean, but that's because I knew what they know.
Right.
And like, you're talking to some drug addict who's already on edge and doesn't really understand how the system works. So as soon as they say something, he's runs out of the bank.
They would like, that doesn't make sense. Or how did the person get your PIN number? Oh, he asked me how the guy got my PIN number. I'm like, you don't know.
Right. We've had this conversation.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So in my mind, I said, okay, so this is happening. Like it went from, well, actually it never was 100% because it probably went from about 80 to 70% down to about 20%. They just started giving flack. So in my mind, I said, I have to overcome the flack.
Right.
Like I have to make it where there's no question
that this could not have been this person.
It could not have been you.
Right.
So I start thinking to myself, what if, because I had someone that was showing me that he could duplicate the card.
Right.
Like by putting the information on the back of a card I have.
MSR 205
yes.
machine where they just swipe it and they take another card and they put the information back on the magnetic strip. So now you got two cards.
Right. So I said, well, because this is all what's coming to be. So when that happened, I said, well, I wonder what would happen if I sent someone to like Columbus, Ohio.
Right.
And they opened up a couple of bank accounts and we deposit $5,000 in 3 accounts, one person. And then I had my guy in Atlanta go into the post office and buy $5,000 worth of money orders, right? And then my friend go into the bank and say
10 minutes later.
10 minutes later and say, what the?
In what'd you say, Chicago? What'd you say?
In Columbus, Ohio.
In Columbus.
And say, hey man, I had $5,000 in here. They're like, well, you just made a large withdrawal in Atlanta, Georgia.
5 minutes ago? When was that? 10 minutes ago?
Like,
they say, oh, that was 10 minutes ago in Atlanta. Well, I've been here. What are you talking about?
Like, you think I'm Superman?
Right.
No, I don't. I'm actually going to cut off your card and they give them the money back. So I went from having flack at 70% and people
buckling, all right,
to them like, oh my God, you've been frauded.
Right.
Mike, let me hurry up and give you your money.
You poor thing.
Yes. So that's how I was rolling that for a while. That actually never crumbled on me. It just, I think my arrest was the interruption. But
So so here's the part that I like. How did you get the people that at some point you couldn't get enough drug addicts to be doing this? And you were doing this on a scale. I know you were doing this on a scale where you're sending 3 guys to Ohio, 3 guys to Illinois, 3 guys to, Arizona, to like all over the country, 2 or 3 guys here. Where are you coming up with? This is the part I love. Where are you coming up with? Like, what was your thought process, and how did you eventually figure out where to come up with guys that are willing to do this?
Well, the guys willing to do it, you're talking about the people. So what I was, basically what you're saying is my supply chain.
Yeah.
All right. So my supply of people to go in came from drug dealers.
Right.
You're
jiggling, you're leaning,
I'm all on the chair though. I'm not.
No, you're not. You are not. You're leaning.
No, my hand.
Your microphone's going like this.
It's my hand on the table.
Okay, well, you go get like. All right.
Okay, so
breathe.
Okay, my supply of people came from drug dealers.
Right.
Okay, my supply of individuals to open up accounts in their name came from people incarcerated. So I had a chain of identities that I was buying out of people locked up.
Right.
So I would actually have people who were locked up, and I would pay like $1,000 if the people locked up would sell me their identity.
Right.
And so I use them to give. So what I would do is, if you've never had a bank account, I would take your identity, go get an ID in your name, go get a social security card, send someone to another state and city to open up 3 bank accounts in your name. Of those 3 bank accounts, we would deposit money, and then I would steal the money, and you'd say, "Hey, it wasn't me."
Right.
So
once they got the debit cards issued.
Right. Once they got the debit card, and so we used to do PO boxes. We started just doing apartments. So we'd send 3 people up there. They'd rent an apartment, and they'd live. Like, I'd pay the rent for like two or 3 months, and once we got all the debit cards, so each person would do 3. So you got 3 times 3 is 9 times $5,000.
All right, so $45,000.
$45,000.
Each one's worth $45,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what about the arraignments?
What do you mean?
Remember, you would go to. That's what I meant. Not the drug deal. I meant when you would go and sit in the court.
Oh, you're talking. Okay. Yes, at some point. Like,
I mean, I understand it wasn't all the people you were getting,
well,
but it was.
Well, that was all right. So I'm not going to say that was. I did that a couple of times because I'm like, these drug dealers are ridiculous.
Right.
Not drug dealers. These drug users are ridiculous. They were I have story after story about dealing with them, like, because you'd fly them out of town and put them in a hotel, and then and I had companies set up where I would pay for their hotel like a corporation. And I had a gentleman call me up and say, "Are you human resources?" And I'd be like, "Yes, sir." He goes, "Listen, man, I don't know how to tell you this, but I think your employees are on drugs." And I'm like, "What?" He goes,
crazy.
Yeah. He goes, the girl that was here was walking around the hotel topless. Like, we had to have security. He goes, "I think they're on drugs." So, I mean, the stories go on and on.
When they sold the rental car.
Oh, are you talking about the 3 girls that I picked up?
I just remember one time they called and they said, like, they
screaming.
called you and they said that they had
sold
the rental car.
The guys got the rental car. I don't know what to do. They're screaming and hollering. And I hung up the phone, and it was a prepaid phone, and I just had it disconnected. I'm like, okay, it was horrible. The stories were horrible. Dealing with drug addicts was horrible. So sometimes I got impatient with that. So in my mind, I like, how do I recruit criminals, right, that are willing to commit crimes that may or may not be on drugs? Like, where would I see those criminals?
Right. How do I come across them?
Right. So I'm like, maybe in jail. So what I was thinking, like, I'm thinking back on my first appearance. First appearance is they give the resume of your priors.
Yeah.
So
he's been arrested for this. He's been because you're trying to get bond. And so they're like, he's been incarcerated twice for for fraudulent checks. He's been arrested twice or 3 times for credit card fraud. He's been so that you're sitting there. You're sitting there thinking.
I went with exactly. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to go down to a first appearance. I'm trying to remember somehow I was at a first appearance. I don't know if it was an arrest of mine or if I had to go to somebody's first appearance because I was going to bond or I hired them an attorney. I don't remember what the situation was, but I was at a first appearance and I'm listening to what's going on and I'm like, what was that guy's name again? I remember thinking that to myself, like, what was that guy's name again? So I decided, like, I'm going to go and sit at the first appearance, which has nobody but lawyers. So I went in there with pen and paper, and I'd write down female or male, right? And I'd get their chart. Oh, perfect. No drugs, checks, And so I would write down names, and generally I got about 2 or 3 per first appearance, and I waited. I gave them like 2 or 3 weeks to see if they bonded out. If they bonded out or got OR, I didn't pursue them because
typically they're not going to. If they have a list of charges, it's difficult to get bond. Like
and somebody
they want a lot of money.
Somebody that gets bonded out really doesn't believe you. Like if everything by me was trial and error, so if you got bonded out, I still tried to approach some people. And they were not very receptive, you know what I'm saying? Or like, because of the way I talk, a lot of times when I approach people because of the way I talk, they think I'm the police.
Right.
That's happened to me numerous. I've had people run from me, or I've had a guy that a friend referred said, "Stop the car, fuck you," and got out of the car. Right. So we're looking, and I'm looking at the friend like, what happened? So she goes and talked to him. She goes, "Oh, he thinks you're the police." I'm like, what? Anyway, moi? But so dealing with those people, like people who got bonded out, was difficult. So if they were still in prison, I would send them $100, or I'd send them a letter and $100, and I'd say, "Hey, I'll bond you out."
Right.
Like I would act like I was a friend of theirs because I was able to pull their information, and I would say, "Hey, I want you to work with this such and such. Hey, I'm a friend of John. Yeah, John, I got the money to bond you out, but if I bond you out, I want to know if you could do this for me."
Right.
And they'd
I
be
remember
like,
you said everybody knows a John.
Yeah. And he'd be like, "Well, what do you need me to do?" "Well, like if you can do this, this, and this, I'll pay you this much." They go, "Are you serious?" And I would always have them go somewhere close by where we could drive them and do it. It worked out for like 3 people out of about 15. They became pretty decent workers, but most of those people were on drugs. It was a clever idea, but it was just another link to people on drugs. That's all it was. But it was a clever idea, but it works pretty good. I know you like that idea.
I love that. I love that, going and sitting there and just listening to, okay, this guy would probably do it. Just writing down the information, then you mail him a letter with the thing. Or I remember you said one time you guys stuck like your wife went into where their property was. She went into the property unit, or was it once or how many times, and actually left them like a cell phone with a phone number.
Yes.
And so you can go in, like if you get arrested, that's Colby. So if Colby gets arrested, we can go. I can then turn around the next day, and I can go to the property section of the sheriff's department and say, "Look,
and leave him a cell phone.
Colby's in, he's in jail, but he's going to get released in a couple days. I want to leave his cell phone in his property," and they'll go, "Sure." And they'll take the cell phone and stick it in his property.
Yes.
So 3 days later, when you get bond and you get out and you get your property, there's a cell phone in there. So it could be a cell phone. You can leave whatever. I need to give him some money, or here's his credit cards. He forgot his wallet. So you can leave whatever you want in there. So when these guys get their stuff, they're like, okay, here's his cell phone. I'm supposed to call this number.
Yep.
And they call the number, and he'd say, "Go meet me at the hotel. Go down the street, walk across the street, and whatever.
I got you a rental car," and da 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 da. I mean, Of course, you know how I got the rental car. I mean, it was all bleeded in. It all the circles linked into one.
Like that's what bothers me. It's like the guy. Was it
Chris? The ringleader?
Yeah, but that's the problem. It's Chris. It's the Chris. Is it Arano or Aranog or something? I forget. The guy who was running the credit card ring in L.A. To me, it's like there's like he kept paying for. He's running this huge credit card ring where they're manufacturing credit cards. They're hacking into systems, manufacturing or counterfeiting credit cards, putting the information on the credit cards, coming up with fake IDs. They've got girls that go in and buy tons of merchandise, and then they're selling it. And he gets busted because he ends up renting a hotel room using a fake credit card, and it gets denied. It's like, wait, you guys are upstairs on the top floor of the hotel in a room with all of your equipment, and you're using a stolen credit card. What if it doesn't go through? What if they call? What if the cops show up? Why don't you spend your own money? Like, this is a minor, it's a minor charge for the hundreds of thousands you're making. You're trying to save money on $100 room. What are you doing? And that's what happened. His whole ring gets busted because he gave him a credit card, it didn't go through. Gave him another credit card, it didn't go through. Gave him another credit card, it went through, but now the clerk is suspicious. So then they end up calling the credit card manufacturer company, the merchant, and saying, something's not right. This guy used like multiple credit cards. And this one went through. Who's this credit card under? And they gave it to him, and it's not the same guy. They call the sheriff. Sheriff comes up, bangs on the door, opens the door. They're sitting there making credit cards. Hey, what's up? They're cranking out credit cards. The sheriff's like, what are you doing? He walks in. The whole thing, this thing just stopped.
Wow, that was in a fast 30 minutes.
Yeah, it flies by, bro. Like at some point, I'll get. Some point, if this takes off, then we'll get the cameras that just go for hours. Like you just turn them on, they just go and go. Like there's a way with enough money, with a couple $2,000-$3,000, you can get this up so that it's just seamless. So the sheriff walks in and he sees him just cranking out the credit cards. It's over. It's like all because it's the same thing with the car things. Like you're using all these, like to me, all of those, you're juggling a lot. If anything goes wrong, the whole thing comes down. Like to me, to me, that's like I would be paying for to get the 100,000. I'll spend $5,000 of my own money to get the 100,000. So,
Well,
I'm not trying to down you. I'm not trying to fault you.
Man, I'm not. Listen, I'm not taking it. I'm not taking it as fault. It's because I was willing to do that, but the people I was dealing with wouldn't allow me to do that.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So stealing the rental cars or wrecking the rental cars. Right. It
getting
came.
The cops called.
To the hotel. And like, wow, you guys are strung out on drugs, and it was horrendous. The people I was dealing with were horrible. They were horrible. So what's weird is like parts of me in my life now, I'm very happy I don't have to deal with that because that used to drive me nuts. That, it felt like I had to deal with those people to make any money. They were horrible. They were horrible.
Yeah.
And so they would, like I told you, getting the police called at the hotel, or they would turn in a rental car. And the rental car company called, hey, this the front end of this car is smashed. So I'd call the guy and hey, the rental car company said the front end of the car is smashed. Like, what? That's crazy. I didn't see any scratches on it when I turned it in.
Really? Drug addicts. All right.
I'm like, really? Yeah. Okay. You're fired. Yeah. When you get back into town, don't even bother calling me.
I'm lucky. Everybody I was dealing with were professional people. They would still get scared.
Well, scared is one thing.
All right.
High is different.
Yeah, high. Yeah. Right. I dealt with basically most. Everybody I was dealing with were professional people, and they were basically doing what they do. And the few times I dealt with people but I was for the most part, I was the one who was. Well, no. I was going to say I almost never went in. It wasn't until when I went on the run that I really started going into the bank and going and doing everything myself. Before that it was, no, you go in. No. Here's the card. Here's this. You go in and get this. You go in. Yeah. So that's true. But then when I was on the run, it was just, I'm already wanted. Well, I might as well go in.
The problem, and that's an issue, because I would do it. or my wife and I would do it, and ours was always flawless. So I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, this is
Well, because listen, they can feel that confidence. They can feel when you're talking about. Think about what this guy did. He gets into a car. He's already jonesing for drugs, and you say, "Take this. Your name is Tom Jones. Walk in, tell him I'm Tom Jones. Give him this, and tell him you want cash." That's really all they know. So it would take an hour or two to really explain the scam for that person to feel confident enough to walk in. And when they say, "Well, I don't understand, Mr. Jones, when was the last time you used your credit card?" Like right then they go, "Ah!" And they run. Where if it's you, you're like, "I have no idea. I mean, what?" You know what I'm saying? You're ready to start arguing. What are you talking about? I got ID. I got this. Give me the. I don't know. My wife has my card. I don't like. I'm ready to start. Give me. Where's the manager?
Jump over the counter.
Yeah. Listen. Give me my money. I
Right.
don't know what's happening here. I want my.
In fact, give me my stuff and your
Yeah,
manager's
I'm closing
name.
the account. I want to close the account. Give me a cashier check then. I don't care. I mean, they're just like, now they're upset. I'm ready to argue. But yeah, if you're some drug addict, you're scared to death.
Yeah, and that was the issue. So dealing with them was like what I'm saying. That was the problem. So all of my plans were always around like what I know it could be done, and then watching someone else, like I'm like this is flawless, and watching someone insert flaws in what I thought was flawless. Like oh my God. So it was troubling. So I just started saying, well, it's not worth, because when they wreck a rental car, that's $20,000. So you send someone on a trip and you make 60 bands or $60,000 and you're paying them, and now you got to pay 30, 40 for a rental car. I'm like, had that been in such and such's name, then it wouldn't matter.
Right.
I wouldn't be paying that. So it was just too much risk. It was too much risk.
Right. Information. He was getting their information. Then he was going and was calling, and like I forget who it was, Capital One, whoever was offering, like AT&T, whatever. So they were offering a card that once you got accepted, they would overnight it to you, and in their mind, they were thinking, AT&T or whoever. Let's say it was at Capital One. They're thinking, well, we're going to overnight it to their house. So one, they're calling us and applying for the loan or for the credit card from their home phone. We know the home phone is connected, like we can look in our system and that number goes to this house. So then we're overnighting then they gave us the same address, so we know it's them. We got they got like 800 credit scores. So we're gonna overnight this $20,000 or $30,000 credit card to them.
Right.
Then when they activate it, they have to activate it from the home phone also. Well, remember the spoof card?
Yes.
Or spoof app. So this guy's using the spoof app. And the way they figured it was, yeah, but still we're overnighting it. We're sending it to them and they have to sign for it. So this guy's pulling up in his Lincoln town car, in his Cadillac, and he knew they're overnighting it. It's coming today. So he would pull up and wait, sit in his car for an hour or two. And he said when he'd see the FedEx thing, he'd hop out of the car and start walking up the front driveway, and FedEx guy would, because the FedEx guy pulls up and he starts filling out some paperwork. Then he gets the package, so then when he walks up, you're standing at the front door, or you're walking out, or you're walking up getting the garbage cans or whatever. And he would see you and he'd go, nobody's home. Or even if there's a car in the driveway, nobody's looking out the window. So he would be like, he'd go, hey, Mr. Johnson? Yeah, what's up? Yeah, John. Yeah, I'm John Johnson. Oh, can you sign for this? Sure. They don't ask for ID. He signs for it. They give him the fucking card. He takes the card. He sits back in his car. And then he calls with the fucking spoof app and activates the card. He then turns around and goes, it's gas. Make sure it's working. It's going through great. Then he turns around and boom, Rolex. Just boom, boom, boom. Just starts running it up. He was making a fucking killing. This guy Boziak did the same thing multiple times, but this guy did it to such an extent that at one point he actually got a card for like $50,000 in the name, and it was a U.S. attorney.
Oh, I think you told me about that.
Yeah, it's bad. It was like they didn't give a shit. He said went on for a year or so. He said did it for a year or so. He was just listen. This guy was ridiculous. His teeth were all gold and diamonds.
Black guy?
No, a white guy with gold and diamonds. Yes, of course it was a black guy. So
I can tell. All right, go ahead. I can tell you some white guys.
I've met some white guys, a couple, very few though.
No, ain't no very few. Them wiggers. But go ahead.
So, but yeah, he was. They went after him with vengeance. I mean, they tracked him down. But after they ran that thing up, it was 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, a month later, they had him, smashed him.
Oh, that means he went to the U.S. Attorney's house.
Yeah, that's exactly. He didn't realize it was a U.S. attorney. Like, it was just an attorney. He's like, I knew he was an attorney. He didn't say U.S. attorney. He was just an attorney. He's like, so I was like, oh, what are you? Oh, I'm an attorney. He's like, because the information I was given was just that he's a lawyer.
What was he buying information online on the dark web?
I think he had somebody at a bank or something like. It's amazing how many of these people at the banks will give you information.
The banks have started limiting the information that their employees have access to.
Yeah.
Because it used to be. Whew.
Are
we recording?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, fuck, you didn't mention it.
So what? We're talking.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm way back here. You know what I'm saying? Like, I wasn't thinking.
I think it should be good. That's why I put my second headphone in to see if it sounds like it's still here.
Well, I just told the whole story now. I was ready to tell the whole story again.
To tell the whole story again.
Well, I can. He was recording the whole time. I didn't realize you were recording.
Yeah.
Did you get it from the beginning?
Once you guys, I don't know where I started. Once you guys started talking, I just got up, clicked all the cameras on.
I saw that.
So for the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's about
okay.
those.
That's fine. Whatever. So yeah, so that was a guy I knew I had met in prison, and I want to say his name was his last name was like Jefferson or Jeffries. Yeah, he's funny. He left prison. He left, and like a year and a half, 2 years later, he came back. It was just a violation, I think. Well, what had happened was he got pulled over. Let me do this. So he got pulled over, and when they searched the car, first it wasn't his car, but when they searched the car, there were credit cards in random people's names. When, of course, when they check out the credit cards, they're stolen. But his whole thing was, it's not my car. And so they couldn't really charge him like they charged him if they had to drop the charges because you didn't catch the person driving the car, and he says it's not him, and the other guy says it's not him. So what are you gonna do? But of course but you were caught, you were pulled over by the police, you were arrested, you were charged, they dropped the charges, but you violated because you were you had interaction with the police, and we don't believe that you didn't know, and so they violated him. He gave him like 8 months or a year, like the remainder of his probation. They had him. He did it like 8 months in prison or something like that. And I remember the whole time he's like, "They can't do that. They can only give me this." But the fact is 8 months. By that point, it's too late.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing you can't fix anything in 8 months.
No, not with him.
So he did the remainder of the 6 months or 9 months, whatever it was, in prison, and he got out, and that was it. But yeah, he came back. But he was sharp. Like he really had it down. He had a bunch of different scams like that.
Well, you have to have to do something like that. You got to have multiple hustles. You're generally not going to just do one thing. And
it's all right. Is that you or me?
That's me. It's a Bible verse. All right. Anyway, Dominus Omen. But anyway. Generally, you start your circle starts intertwining with other people, meaning like the information that he would need to pull that off means that he's dealing with either someone selling that information or getting like credit card numbers or giving him bank accounts. So chances are he was doing multiple things with that type of information. So
I don't know if he had. I wonder, like. I don't know if he had somebody who could make fake IDs. I remember at one point I was talking about, because I remember at one point I told him about Bozak.
Right.
This guy wrote a story.
You like Bozak.
I love his story. But because he did all kinds of different stuff, you know.
It sounded like he was doing just one thing.
Who, Bozak?
Well, yeah. He was a scammer. He was a skimmer is what they call it.
No. He was counterfeiting credit cards.
Well,
ultimately, he was manufacturing, he was making it. But I mean, he started carding, and then he stopped doing that because he was like, his brother gets arrested twice, he gets grabbed one time. So he's like, I'm going to get caught eventually. So then he just starts manufacturing counterfeit credit cards and selling them online. He's like, because then all I have to do is take the order, I make the cards, and then I just drop them in a Dropbox. Like, there's no chance I'm getting caught.
Right.
So, but what I was gonna say is, like, he was buying his information on like the forums. So people would either provide him the dumps, the dump of information. They'd either provide it to him, or he would, when he was doing his own stuff, he would buy it. So you have these big breaches where somebody, where some Russian hackers come in and they crack, Citibank, and they get 40,000, people's information. You can buy that information. So he would buy it and then put it on the cards, and he would use the cards. And he, of course, could make the actual driver's licenses or IDs or something. I remember where we were talking one time, and like, to me, how I was getting my information was I was just running an ad. I was just running an ad in the newspaper. I thought for $300 or $500, I'd run an ad in the Flyer magazine or whatever, and say, good credit, bad credit, no problem. Home loans available. Call now, free applications, and put the phone number. People call up and they give me everything because they think they're applying for a loan.
Right.
I take their information. And then I'd order their social security card, their birth certificate, their high school transcripts, or I'd register to vote in their name, and then I'd go get a driver's license or an ID from the DMV. Like, everything was real. Everything he's got is fake. Like, to me, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
Right. But you're walking in, and, like, to me, I'm ready to argue with you because
Everything
I know
you have is
right.
real.
Right. That's a real social. That's a real driver's license. The credit cards that I'm now using are credit cards that I actually applied for and had sent to me.
Right.
Like, the real person doesn't know anything about this, and there's no way for them to stumble across it, especially when I started doing it with homeless people.
Right.
Started surveying homeless people. Like, now there's no way that the guy that was living under the bridge in Nevada knows that I'm using have an ID in his name in North Carolina,
Right.
and that I've got a $10,000 credit card or a $60,000 car in his name. He has no clue. Like,
Right.
So if you're sitting there, something's not right. What? Like, I'm ready to argue with you because there's no way you track that guy down.
Right.
Nobody's complaining. Oh, we've got to call. We're going to call Bank of America. Call them.
Let's run it. Right.
Let's do it. So, but like, stuff that he was doing, I'd be terrified. So the stuff that you were doing, I'd be terrified. There's a real person out there. A lot of
stuff. Ours was similar.
right. Well, I mean, sometimes you're taking a real person with good credit. Sometimes, right?
Yeah,
like they could figure it out.
That was earlier,
Right.
and that was the bane of most of my arrest.
Yeah.
It is because, like, one point I'm in jail and I'm walking and I'm saying, okay, this isn't working.
Right.
Taking people's information and using it is shutting down on me at the most inopportune times and ending me up in jail.
Right.
And I walked around. I said, okay, so I need to
Better scam.
right.
Yeah.
I need to stop using people who are going to call on me.
Right.
And that's when I realized the people who aren't going to call the police on me have had the police called on them. So they're here with me now. So, so that's what changed me up, because that was a problem. And no matter how well it was going, it would end. It never, none of them ever ended when I was done. They all ended when I needed them the most.
Right.
Like,
So-
all of those cards.
So what were the scams? What were any scams you came across in prison that people were doing?
Okay, so there's some I was impressed with and some I wasn't so impressed with. Like, I met someone that was doing skimming, and I was kind of impressed with that, understanding it. But then I wasn't impressed because he would just make the cards, buy gift cards, and then sell the gift cards, and then get the money and spend it what he wanted to spend it on. So, I just thought that was, like, redundant.
Right.
So it was, but I was impressed because I didn't know how to make the card, So
Right.
knowing that you were running that, even though I did that a little bit, copying the debit cards and the PIN, I never did it to the level where I was like he was doing manufacturing cards. But have you heard about the people who convince elderly people or I want to just say white people because I find it to be government.
Horrible. I can already tell this is
With the green dot to go and buy green dot reloads. Have you heard about that?
No, but I met a guy that was doing a scam that was, and basically the people he was hitting were like elderly people.
Yes.
And I was going, I mean, it was a timeshare, like a timeshare scam that he was hitting.
You're not talking about Barrington, are you?
No. no. This was no. But anyway, you were saying, what was he doing?
Well, he would convince people that they had a warrant out for not paying taxes, or that, and he'd say, listen, you've got a warrant. We're coming to pick you up. You need to go down to your nearest Walgreens and get a $700 reload on Green Dot, right? And he's telling me that. I'm like, no way.
Would do that.
No way.
That?
And when I read his paperwork, people did that. And I said, so you would just trust them to go do that and call him? He's like, trust them? I never got off the phone with him. And you'd hear him, Sally, I can't do that now. I got to go down to Walgreens and get a $700. Give me my card. Yeah, and they stay on the phone. Just let me stay on the phone with you. Go up to the clerk and pay. You know, I wouldn't have believed that until I got out and I went to buy a Walgreens reload, and they ask you, is anyone telling you to do that? Yeah. That scam was so huge that even Green Dot had to intervene to stop it. People buying reloads for prepaid cards, being scammed. It's like, I go, that is unbelievable. Like that, I'm like,
you know, I mean, you don't want to say like that, like how could you be that stupid? Because they're elderly people, and you're older, and so if you're older, then you're more susceptible to just be trusting. But wow, I mean, that's
for me to call you up and say, hey, we were talking about someone. What was it we were talking about? Like, there's no way I would have fell for that. You know. What was it?
It was. I got hired by Vice TV. Vice TV was doing they are doing commercials for T-Mobile, and they were doing phone scams. So they had to interview me. They were interviewing me as an expert on scams.
Right.
And the scam, like they were saying, like, what are these people doing wrong? The problem is all the scams that they gave me to review, the people, like, they were typically like foreigners. Like the people that were falling for it, it was like, okay, well, no American would fall for that unless they were elder. I'm saying, no, you got to know the scam.
Okay.
The scam was like, your mother's been in an accident, and you know, your mom's been in an accident. She's in the hospital. She needs a liver transplant. And the surgery is, you know, $20,000, and if we don't get the $20,000 now, your mom's gonna die. And so the person just happened to have access to a credit card, like a $20,000 credit card, and so he sends them the money. Okay, but he also like had only been in the country a few months and didn't quite understand what was happening. And I guess whatever country he's from, they just let you die. You know, like an American be like, oh, you're gonna fix my mom. You're not gonna let my mom die. Like
right.
So you tell me poor people have to die? Well, guess what? If you're in Peru, poor people just die.
Yes.
Like they don't let you into the hospital. They're
right.
like, the hospital will say, look, you got to give us $20,000 up front for you to be admitted. Otherwise, just tough it out. Like I have a friend whose father had COVID, and they came and they were like, look, we need $20,000, like 20 whatever, the equivalent of 20,000 to admit him, and they were like, well, we don't have $20,000.
Oh.
And they were like, well,
next,
he'll probably be fine.
Yeah.
He went home and died. It's just, that's Peru, but they're not going to do that here. They're going to be like, no, come on in. We'll get you later. We'll put it on your credit. We're going to figure it out. So, that's why it's $120 for an aspirin in hospitals.
Right.
But so in that scam, they had different scams, and that was one scam where they kept hitting these people. They'd get somebody for $5,000, for 10, for 20. And this guy paid $20,000. Well, but he wasn't like, I think either he was not he was new to the U.S. or he was either new to the U.S. or he was like a young kid, didn't quite understand. Like he was like 18 or 19, and he didn't understand that seemed like something they could do to him. The other one scam was, there were various scams. One was like that. It was like you owe the IRS money. You have to pay $5,000 right now, and you had to go and get money or $800 or whatever. Another scam was where they were hiring like it was somebody in the industry in the photography industry, and they said, hey, we're from like Vanity Fair, whatever, some big company, and they said we're going to hire you to do a photo shoot in Europe.
Right.
Okay, great. So they get their stuff together, they send them a letter of intent, like it all looks really legit to them. And so just before they're leaving to go, they're like, okay, look, you have to pay for the plane yourself. We'll reimburse you. And you have to pay this $800, photography fee from Italy. You have to front that money. So then you pay $900 to get your plane ticket. They say you have to send us $700 or $800, whatever the cost of this license or fee to be a photographer in Italy from the United States. So you pay that fee. Then when you get there, there's another fee you have to pay. They end up getting like very little money, like $1,000, $1,100. It's minor. This person literally paid for their plane ticket, flies over to Italy. I mean, it's a whole thing for very little money. And they were like, well, what did they do wrong? And I'm like, well, most of what these people did wrong was they didn't listen to their intuition, because every one of these people thought something doesn't feel right. Like,
right.
That's not right that you're going to make me pay up front. Like, you're hiring me. Why am I putting up my money? But they were so excited about getting this opportunity to work for Vanity Fair or whoever. It wasn't Vanity Fair, but whoever this big time person was. They were so excited they didn't want to raise a fuss. The kid is excited. He felt like something wasn't right, but he paid anyway.
Right.
So the thing is, they didn't question it. Like, there's no reason not to question. Like, well, I didn't want to upset them. What are you talking about? You're going to upset them. You're asking me for 20 grand. I'm going to make a couple phone calls. Why can't I get off the phone with you? Why can't I call the hospital back? Why can't I? They didn't do that, and that was the whole thing. So I've heard of scams similar to that, and then one of them was like the tax type scam. You owe this much money.
Yes.
The big one is where you get these things from Social Security. You get a
yes,
call
get
from
the
Social
call. Yeah, I've been getting those.
I've gone.
Your number has been.
Well, your Social Security number has been suspended or canceled, or like, what are you talking about? Like, you know what I feel like saying? Like, one time they called and I was on the phone in my car, and I was telling the guy, bro, please call me back. I'm on my car right now. I can't talk, but I don't want this to happen. I don't want my you can't suspend my, like, I'm telling him, like, I'm terrified. Please, but you have to call me back. There's nothing I can do right now. I'm in my car, because I was trying to get home so I could set up my camera shit so I could record it, just because I thought it'd be hilarious. I mean, I literally wanted to get him on the phone and say, listen, bro, obviously, like, you're in some sweatshop in India, or where's the other one? Is it not Angola?
Indonesia?
No, not Angola. Nigeria.
Nigeria.
Yeah, they're awesome. So, I wanted to be like, listen, you're in some sweatshop in Nigeria. You're very good, but you have to understand what you're saying doesn't make sense. Like, everything about the scam, if you know anything about how our system works, you can't suspend my Social Security number. What does that even mean? What are you saying? Like, I feel like
it means it's levitating.
Right. I don't need my Social Security. Like, suspend it how? Or like, that doesn't mean anything to an American. Like, that. You're not going to. So I wanted to say, look, you really need to listen. Here's how you do this, okay? Like, I want to tell them.
I got a better one.
Listen, stop telling people that. Right then, you're losing 30% of your people by saying that stupid shit. Stop it. Like, I want to tell them, here's what you do.
Did he call you back?
No, they never do. I've had him on the phone like 4 times. I always act terrified. Oh my gosh.
No. Call me. I'm ready to give you whatever I need to get unsuspended.
Listen, sometimes when they start transferring you, because at some point they start transferring you, and I'm like, well, what do I need to do? Like, you can tell they know that I'm just giving them shit. Like, they're like, this is serious, sir. I'm like, oh, no, I'm terrified. And they're like, you can tell they almost want to go,
shut up.
You know what's going on, don't you?
Yeah.
You know we're full of it, right? You know this is a scam.
Yeah, shut up.
But yeah, I never managed to get the camera gear on, and that would be so great.
One day.
Yeah, someday. Or because this is the problem, like they call on your phone. So if I had another phone, I could just be like, oh, click, I could record it. Like, I could turn on the video and be like, this is what's happening. But I can't do that. I have to go home and get my camera. It sucks.
We might want to get a phone for those type of scams.
So your boy would get people old people, to give him $700 here, $800 here, $1,000 there. Whatever.
Yes, daily. One of them, he had some number I guess it was a gay site or it was a phone number, and he said you just contacted an underage girl, and so you're about to be arrested. I mean, all this stuff to scare people, and they would pay it.
So I knew a guy who, like, I have to tell him to watch this. He'll be like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you talked about me." So he was from Peru, and he was in Peru, and he was selling. He had a phone. I always say it wrong. It's a phone, whatever. It's like 500 people in a room, like a phone sweatshop where they're selling.
Right.
I forget, like a telemarketing whatever.
Center,
But he called
or
it something. Phone center. He called it a phone center.
Right.
So he said, I had a phone center. He would run ads on like Spanish TV in the United States. He thought because he was in Peru, they can't get me. Like, they don't know what I'm doing is illegal, or I'm not breaking any laws in Peru. And because I'm in Peru, I'm not really breaking laws in the United States. Like,
Right.
He thinks he found like a loophole, idiot. I mean, so he ends up running these commercials for like the ab roller. Right, so you pay $200 for like the ab roller or something when you can get an ab roller for like $29, and you're still overpaying. So he's saying, look, but it's COD. So you just call, and the commercial is like, look, they've got some big fat guy who gets the ab roller, and then suddenly they show another guy who looks like him. He's really thin with abs. He's like, oh, I did this for 2 months. I mean, there's just completely ridiculous things. And these guys at 2 o'clock in the morning, they call. Did it shut off? You good?
Yeah, you're good.
So at 2 o'clock in the morning, they call, and because they don't have to pay anything right then, it's COD, and they order it. Well, then he would have it mailed there, and of course, when they get it, they're like, I don't want this. Like, oh, it's $200, it's $150, whatever it is. They're like, they have to fork out the money. And they're like,
Right.
yeah, I don't want it. Oh, okay. Well, you gave him all your information on the phone. So his collection company. Now, most of these people are like illegal aliens, right? 2 o'clock. They're calling at 2 o'clock in the morning. They're a laborer, and so his collection company would call and say, "Look, you ordered this and you didn't pay for it. Yeah, I know, I changed my mind. No, but you ordered it. You owe the money. So we're going to file a warrant against you. And it's our understanding that you're in the country illegally." Now, 90% of them were, and they'd be like, "Well, yeah, you're an illegal alien, Mr. Juan, Mr. Sanchez or Mr. whatever." And they'd be like, oh. And they say, "Look, we know your address. We're gonna contact ICE. We're gonna." So now it's basically you're threatening them with it's extortion.
Right.
So it falls under the extortion laws. You can't threaten someone with arrest. You can't threaten, like, this is all. Keep in mind, they are illegal. They didn't pay.
Right.
But there's no. Now you're saying arrest, warrant, deportation. Like, you can't do all that. What are you doing?
Without the authority, yes.
Right. You
yes.
don't have the authority, and he's like, but we were in Peru. It was like, so what? So people would, and then he would do this. Like, he'd say, now you owe. We've already filed. Like, 3 days ago you didn't accept it. We've already filed the warrant. So now you owe $500 to get the warrant quashed, plus the $200 for the ab roll, or $100, whatever it was. And so they're like, oh, like, they're terrified. Then they have them immediately go and put money here and wire money here and go to Western Union. I mean, they got these people terrified. So he's like, we did this for a year or two, whatever. It just went, and he's like, the collections were massive. And then, by the way, they never sent you the ab roller. I was like, did they get the ab roller? He goes, no. Why would I give the ab roller?
What?
I'm not resending the ab roller.
Like, I used the same ab
Yes,
roller.
Can you imagine?
I had to buy 6 of those things.
There was the box was empty. It was a brick. So, who's gonna fork out $200? So, what happens is eventually he gets indicted. Like, they track back. The FBI tracks it all the way back and eventually figures out who it is. They indict him and 3 or 4 other people. And he thinks it doesn't matter that I'm indicted. He doesn't even know he's indicted. He literally comes to, like, fly into town one day on a convention.
Why?
Because he's also a poker player. So he flies in for a poker tournament. And, of course, he gets to the airport. He gets off the plane, While I'm here, I don't know what I'll do. I think I'm going to check out that Cirque du Soleil, and I'm going to do that. Look up, see how my brother's doing, and boom, hands behind the back, slams him down, the whole thing. Never got out of prison.
How much time they give him?
Not much. I mean, he got like He got like 4 years or something, and you'd have thought they gave him 40 years.
Yes.
He cried the whole time. He was the whole time,
Yes.
I don't deserve this. I don't this. And I was like, yeah, what does it matter? I mean, you were only extorting little brown people. And I was like, yeah, who cares? Who cares about them? And he was like, stop it. Don't say, keep an eye. He's Peruvian, so he's a little brown person.
Yes.
He'd be like, stop doing, that's not what I was doing. I was like, yes, you were. You were like, oh, so who cares? To hell with those guys, right? That you terrified them. Stop it. And then he would say, every once in a while, he'd go, they were illegal. Like it was okay. He's like,
that justifies it.
Exactly.
That justifies it.
I know, but
They shouldn't have been
they're
there.
not Americans anyway.
That's
I'm like,
right.
apparently the U.S.
Defends them.
Yeah, exactly. The U.S. prosecutors felt that was still illegal. It's like you can't go around shooting people because, I know I shot that guy, but he's illegal.
Your Honor, good point. That's a good point. Yes.
So that's a 2 point
reduction.
2 point reduction. He the whole time he was upset about it. And when I first met him, he shouldn't be here.
Right. That's what he kept saying.
I shouldn't be here. I didn't do anything wrong. I don't know what the collection people were doing. Like those were subcontractors. I don't know what they were doing. And then as I hung out with him and talked to him, they slowly starts admitting a little here, a little there, and I'm like, look, you're a con man, bro. I mean, it's fine.
To me that's a con man.
Yeah. Oh no. This is another thing he was doing, which I thought was great. So you have different tiers as far as because eventually he says to me and my buddy Pete, he goes, I had a buddy Pete in prison, and we used to go, come on, bro, you're a scumbag. It's okay. I'm a scumbag too. We're together. It's okay. And he stop it. That's not true. No. But eventually he admits,
He's a scumbag.
I knew what they were doing. Yeah, I knew what they were doing. I even told them that was a big problem. There were emails where I told them, do this, where I was telling them. I knew, so, but then as he starts opening up and telling us stuff he was doing. I remember him telling me, he's like, I'm telling you stuff that I've done that nobody knows. So, I mean, soccer games, for instance, they have different tiers.
Right.
And so he's in South America. In South America, you can bet on anything. You can bet on anything here. But you can bet on South America, let's say, different, like you have the different tiers as far as A-League, Triple-A League, whatever, as far as soccer games are concerned. So he would but you can only bet so much, right?
Out of the country.
No, he's in Peru.
Right.
And he's betting on Peruvian or Venezuelan soccer.
So where was the limitation set?
The
For Peru or?
No, in general, just on the app. So there's a betting app.
Okay.
And you can take a bet on to decide who wins. Is it going to be the Tigers or is it going to be the Elephants?
Right.
Which one's going to win? And by how much? And they have different they're going to lose by this much, or they're going to win by this much, or more than this much. And
right.
He said the problem is you could only bet so much, so that the people running the thing, they can only. Are we good?
Yeah, we're good.
They can only lose so much.
Right.
So, but keep in mind, he had these call centers, and he has 200, 300 employees. So he would go and he would open up he would get accounts on the betting app in all the employees' names. And he would start betting close to the max that the. All right, it's on. So he would start betting. He would start betting for the employees close to the max that they were going to lose by more than a certain amount.
Right.
Does that make sense? So you're supposed to lose by at least 3 points.
But
3 goals.
He put up it to 6.
Yeah, he'd say right. Well, they're going to lose, but they're going to lose by 6 at least.
Right.
At least 6.
Right.
And then he'd bet close to the max on 30 or 40 or 50 different employees because he
Right.
could only go so much. Then he would turn around and he'd go to the soccer game. And just before the soccer game, he told me, he said, I would go. He said, this is actually what he said. What happened one time? He said, one time I walked in to the locker room, and he goes in and he goes into several of the there's 4 or 5 of the top guys on the team. And he walks in. He said, "Hey, listen, let me talk to you guys." They're like, "Hey, man, we can't. We're getting ready for the game. We can't talk about it." So no, I got a proposal for you. They go, "Well, We can't, but we got to go. We're a couple of minutes. You're not supposed to be out here. You're not supposed to be in the back. What are you doing? Closing. And he's telling the guy, close the door. And the guy's like, no. He's going. We don't have no proposal. Look, listen, you're going to lose. What? He goes, you're going to lose. We all know you're going to lose this game. The other, they're supposed to beat you by like 3 points at minimum. You're going to lose. He's like, no, we got a good chance. He's like, look, I'm not saying, look, we both know you're going to lose. I'm saying, there's money in it for you if you lose by a certain amount. And he said the guy actually stopped and went, Juan, close the door. He said the guy closed the door and he said, you're supposed to lose by, you're scheduled to lose by at least by 3 points, right? He said, I'm asking you if you guys can lose by 6 points, I'll pay you $1,000 a piece. And of course, whatever it was, they were like, whoa! Like I don't know what the equivalent, what the amount was.
A soccer team is what, like 10, 12 people?
Yeah, but it's not all of them. He goes, there's like 4 or 5, like the top guys.
Oh.
You only need a few guys to be like the bulk of a soccer team is pulled by a few guys.
Right.
You know, there are other guys that are holding the positions, but they're average. Like he's got like the top 4 guys, like you know. So okay, so like the goalie or whatever, you know. So there's a few guys.
That's the important one.
Right. So he hits them up, and they're like, all right. He said, so then of course he said the bets are already made. So I've already put the money in on these guys. He said, and I got these guys. He said, man, they lost by like 9 points or something. He said, outrageous. Like I got paid. He said, I ended up making like $30,000 or something. Like, and each employee, this guy got like however many. I don't know what they're called. They're not called paid. They've got like I always called him Perubaboos because he's from Peru.
Perubaboos.
I mean, like, so you made what, like 20, 30 Perubaboos? And he'd go, they're called lira. I think he goes, they're called lira. And I go, whatever. So how many Perubaboos did you make? I mean,
I think their currency is wood or something. Anyway, it's something bizarre. Something bizarre. So
So that was what, and he did that all like over, and he's like, oh, one time I did this, and he was like, because the lower the tier, you can't bet as much. But he said these guys are playing for like $50. He said, so you go in and you say, look, $300. They're like, wow. Like you can for Peru for $300. That's the average person's monthly income.
Right.
They're like $300. We play 2 games a month. We get paid $50 plus I have to have another full-time job. Heck yeah, $300. So he pays 3 or 4 guys $300 a piece, and he wins $30,000.
Rigging it. That's illegal everywhere.
Yeah, I know, but it was. But
Some of that
I never
stuff's
met
by
anybody
death.
that had done. I never met anybody who'd done it.
Me either.
That was one of the things he had done. You know, plus his whole extortion scam, and I always loved it when I would say, "Well, your whole extortion thing, it wasn't extortion." I'm like, "That's not what your indictment says. Your indictment says that's not what the articles that I read said." Yeah, all right, enough already. Enough of that.
How we deny the
Good time.
painfully obvious.
So that's the only. What was it? So
You think I remember now?
oh, I remember. See, tonight you'll be laying in bed going, "Oh,
I should
man,
have said
that
this.
one
I
guy
should have
told
said
me."
this.
We'll do another one. Like,
right.
listen, I got these guys. Keep in mind, I was in a low security prison. You were in like a medium or
And a pen in a penitentiary. Yeah, so there
you were in the medium and a pen. You were in a medium at one point, but even still, there's still just a bunch of. It's 99% thug.
Well,
It's like there's like 30 guys in the whole. There's like
the
there's
drug
like 20
drug
guys,
dealers are boring.
Yeah, well, there's like 20 guys in the whole compound that you can actually have a conversation with.
Yeah.
You know, and everybody else is like it's just drug dealers.
And generally, so here's, not to get off on that topic, but in a penitentiary, the drug dealers are boring. They're fictitious. Most of them. They're not even real. All the stories, you can't even believe it. But the interesting people would be the murderers.
Nice.
The murderers are very interesting. Those are the ones you talk to. But I did meet a guy that was in for like Bernie Madoff for the what do they call that? What was Bernie Madoff was a
Ponzi scheme.
Ponzi scheme that they accused him. I want to look this guy up because he beat them he beat them in trial. Like, this guy reminds me of you, man. So,
listen, if you're a scumbag con man, everybody always says, he reminded me of you.
No. Okay, all right. So
you mean because he was handsome?
He's a handsome guy. He had the slick back hair. He was debonair. He was cool as hell. I called him Bruce Wayne. I called him Bruce because he was wealthy,
Nice.
right?
But with other people's money.
Yeah, out of Houston. I was in Beaumont, so this was out of Houston. But I want to tell you the story because I want to tell you the reason they had him there and what it called for, and because I thought it was hilarious because all he did was steal people's money. Like he took his investors' money and he didn't return it or didn't invest it the way he was supposed to invest it. But he beat them at trial the first time. Like we were in the law library. He was very smart, and he was telling me how he beat them at trial the first time. And the prosecutor, he thought his head was going to explode. It was red because his lawyer said, when the not guilty verdict came, his lawyer's like, okay, Your Honor, so is my client going to be released? And the prosecutor's like, no, I'll have him indicted in 10 minutes. And the prosecutor lost his mind. But I want to tell you this because I can't exactly remember the specifics. But here's the beauty of it, because they got him another charge and they managed to convict him, and he was fighting his second conviction. But the prosecutor got him to a penitentiary because he has this man is never
white collar crimes go straight to the pen. Like white collar, like never been in trouble before.
Yes.
Went to trial, lost, boom, sends them straight to a pen.
How is that possible? You trying to
but
get me killed?
yes,
Right.
yes, we talked about it in the library. I said they actually sent you here for what they call prison justice. Like they get in their mind because I'm fighting his points. I mean, his points were like a 17, but they gave him all of this violence because when he was in school, he got into a fight when he was in the 9th or 10th grade. They put him in a pen for a fight he had in school in the 9th and 10th grade. Like I'm like, that's amazing. But I go, they put you here so that we would do something to you. That's what I told him.
Right.
But he was white guy, so obviously he had to run with the Aryan brothers, and then he had to put in work. So we're sitting there, and I'm like,
you gotta like beat somebody up or stab somebody or get into a fight or hit somebody.
But he was
putting in work.
Yes, it's putting in work. But they put him there because of a fight he had in the 9th grade, and so he has to go there and get into another fight just to survive. And I go, that's how crappy our system is. That a prosecutor would lose a trial and think to himself, you know what? I'm going to really hurt you, including your life and everything. I'll just try to wipe your life out by putting you in a penitentiary based on something you did in the 9th grade.
There was a guy I met in the Low, and his name was Lance. I forget Lance something, but he was basically he'd run some kind of a fraud or something. Went to trial, that lost.
Out of Tampa?
Yeah.
Out of. I knew him. What happened to him? Did he end up winning?
He went to a pen, like he lost.
They sent him to a pen?
Lost, went to a pen, and when he got there, a couple of big guys came up to him and said, "Hey, look, you're going to pay this much money." And he goes, "Well, I'm not going to pay that." I mean, this guy's like 60 something, almost 70 years old, and he's old, and he wasn't little or anything. He was a bigger guy. He was average height, but he was white hair, and he just looked like an old man. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm not going to pay you. I'm not paying anything." They said, "No, you're going to put this much money on our books every single month, and we're going to protect you." He said, "No, I'm not going to do that." Guy punched him right, bam, just smashed him right in there, knocked out a couple of his teeth. I mean, just, this is a big guy. This guy is defenseless. He doesn't even try. He's like, I didn't even try and defend myself because I've never been punched before, so I didn't even realize it was coming because the guy just was like, wham, and he had he's missing a tooth, another tooth is cracked, another one is,
prison justice.
Yeah, and he hit the ground, ended up in the shoe, and then eventually the warden was like, no. The warden comes through the shoe, and eventually I think the warden came in and realized and saw him and saw who he was and looked and was like, no.
It's called prosecutor justice.
And they moved him, jumped him from the pen down to the Low. But he did do 6 or 8 months. And of course, he was only on the compound for a few days.
Yeah.
Until they came to him and said, hey.
I'm trying to remember his name. I think it's Vance was his name. But this guy, he made it the whole time. I think he had to do like 8 months. But I was helping him he told me he could get in trouble just talking to me. But I was helping him the whole time trying to get his points down. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. He's like, I got into a fight in the 9th grade, and now I have to come here and jump on some guy to be able to walk the come. I got to walk with the Aryan brothers. All because I won trial. All because I won trial.
People are scumbags.
The old Ponzi scheme, taking other people's money and not investing it where you're supposed to invest it. So I think Matt's lost interest in our podcast.
No, it's not that. There's a producer that I actually was talking to for a while, and a mutual friend just sent me an email saying she's producing something and whatever. I actually pitched her a story, which she pitched to 50 Cent's people, and they loved the story. And then COVID happened, and then I didn't hear. And then she said, "Oh, it's been put on hold." And then this happened when COVID just wiped out a whole slew of things that I had going. But now it's all starting up again.
Yes, it's all coming back around. What was that we were talking about? They'll start going, what was that story that such and such pitched to me? See if you can get her back on the phone. All that stuff will come back around.
Yeah, that's fine. Look, listen, I would. The worst day out here better than the best day inside. So it's like, look, if things just continued to go the way they're going, I got no complaints. I got no complaints.
Me either. And you were in a soft camp. I was in the hard one.
Listen, and the and the thing is, the fraud stories in there, like just one after another after another.
I wish I would have.
You would have. It was tons. It was like great entertainment. Like I'll bet. The problem is, like, when I hear stories about violence or it turns my stomach so much, like it depresses me. So these guys, when I was in the medium, and you would hear guys talk about, and I kicked in the door, or I grabbed the dude, and it was just like I would physically feel ill, and it was depressing. But I went to the low, and you sit with all the fraud guys seek each other out. So you're sitting there going, well, what did you do? And he's telling you the story. You get this joy. This was like, oh my God, you did what?
Taking the system.
What happened? Oh, that's hilarious. So listen, I was terrified. They called, I ran out the back, and you're like, oh my God, why didn't you just say this? I didn't know.
Just like me, when you catch them delivering the story perfectly.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and the timing and everything as they're reliving it, you can see in their eyes, they're back in the moment, traveling. It's awesome.
There was a guy named Andrew Levinson who he did what's called a BizOps scam.
What's that?
Business opportunity scam.
Oh.
Where he sold sections of cities and would sell you like Red Bull vending machines, and you get 15 if you buy, and you get, this is your section, and I won't sell it to anybody else. And it's a whole thing. It really wasn't that much of a scam, but one time I remember he had told me this story, and he delivered it it was so just great. And then the next time, like a week later, we were all sitting having lunch, and I said, hey, tell him the story about such and such. And he told the story, but he left out like a part of the story. And I was so disappointed. I was like, nah, bro, remember you said last time when you told me, you said this. And he's like, oh yeah, that's what, yeah, that happened. I'm like, oh, bro, next you got to tell the story like that. That's like your setup was perfect like that. I was trying to tell him how to tell his story.
That's what you're doing to me, but you have to. The mood has to be right. You really have to.
Because I know, because you had told me, like, look, I was like, well, where were you getting the guys? You were like, oh, listen, we used to go in and we would go into the court and and you explained that whole thing. Then when you just told me, you're like, drug dealers, this, that. It's like,
well, it was
the court. Like, that's the best part. You totally skated over the court.
True. Hey, listen. You think you tell your story the same every time?
No. Mine's. I mean, it's probably subtly different. But listen,
subtly.
I've
heard you skim over some parts.
I do. Look, it really honestly it depends. It depends on the subscriber count. Like if you've got 500,000 subscribers, I'm giving you the full story. If you've got 40,000 or 20,000 or 5,000 subscribers, then it's like, yeah, listen, I'm not giving you everything. I'm not going to tell you the 2.5 hour version. You're getting the hour version. The hour version, I leave a lot of stuff out
Yes.
because you don't deserve it. And, or if it's like a Zoom, it's like, look, if you flew me out to Houston and it's like Valuetainment, but Houston, I think they were in Dallas. But so if you flew me out to Valuetainment, or if you put me up in a nice hotel and I know we got a couple hours, you're gonna get the full treatment. But if it's a Zoom and come on, stop. You're not paying me. It's a Zoom. It's the middle of the day. This sucks. I'm not telling you the whole thing.
Like, because your Greenville or your, what is it, North Carolina? It was South Carolina. That was my favorite when you this close. Like I love that story. Yeah. And I've heard it about 4 times, but I've never heard it the same as when we had Harmon's classroom on a Saturday. And you're outline. Oh, I'm like, what, Zach? Blah, blah, blah. And you're in the front. I'm at a desk, and you're at the board, like, oh, boom, boom. Listen.
Good times.
Yes.
Well, you have a captive audience, and I have all the time in the world.
And who was it? It was me. It was one other person. I can't remember who that was. It was one other person. It was 3 of us.
Horrible.
What?
You remember the Snickers? What was that douchebag that used to come by and he would put a Snickers on my desk? Like we were teachers. We teaching GED. We had these idiot students, and this guy, the guy would come.
Mega idiots.
The guy would come and he'd put a Snickers on my desk, like, and I would go, get out of here with your Snickers, bro. And he'd laugh, and he did it all the time. So one day he comes and he puts the Snickers on the desk, like, here's the Snickers, And I go, boom, I grab it, I peel it open, I eat it, and he goes, ah! What did you do? That was my Snickers. And I was like, fuck you. You put it on my fucking desk, you fucking smart ass. And he's like, you want it back? He's like, you owe me a Snickers.
We had unfortunately we had good times in there with Harmon.
Hilarious.
It was funny. Oh man.
I used to look, somebody asked me when I got out of prison, they go, what's the difference between the medium and the low? And I went, I said, it's hard to explain, but the simplest explanation is this: if you're in the medium and someone leaves a Snickers on your pillow, don't eat it. If you come into your cell in the low and someone's left a Snickers, you can eat it. And he's like,
I'm sure that leaves them like.
He's like, what is that? What is that, man? It's not dangerous.
Right.
You're not gonna have to do nothing. Some guy comes back for his Snickers. You go, fuck you, you fucking Snickers.
Of course,
you're in a fucking low.
And in the medium, the guy says, fuck you.
Yeah, the guy says,
like, what was the Snickers for? Fuck you.
I see you ate my Snickers.
That's right.
The door closes.
Fuck me.
Oh my God. It's funny now.
It wasn't funny at the time. What about the way, like when I introduced myself to you? Do you remember that?
Yeah. I'm leaning in. Listen, I don't talk to nobody. I'm not talking to anybody there. I got guys coming up to me offering to buy me sneakers.
Oh, yeah. People like, what about, do you need a friend? Like, Matt, can you want to live with me? I need a friend. You're like, well, don't you know anybody on the compound?
Yeah. Guys like, hey,
homosexuality.
Can I talk to you? I've been there like 2 days. I'm like, yeah, what's up? You need anything? I don't even know. I don't know anything about prison, but I know that didn't sound right. And I'm like, no.
But you had the long hair, Matt. I mean, that's
I had grown. No, was it grown out a little
yes,
bit?
You had the
shaggy.
Yes.
Listen, these guys. I'm like, no, I don't need anything. I mean, I got whatever you need, bro. You need tennis shoes, I'll get you tennis shoes. You need. I'm like, whoa, I don't need anything, bro. What's good? I'm just saying, looking for me a friend. You know what I mean? No, I don't. I said, this is a friendly compound. There's lots of guys here. I'm sure they could be your friends.
You can't talk to somebody else in the compound?
Yeah, I'm like, and he's sitting there, he's like, I'm just saying.
And all of it big black guys, right?
All of them big black guys.
All right, so then I hear Matt Cox is on the compound.
Yeah.
I said, Matt Cox? The infamous Matt Cox? I'm like, oh my God, I've been dying to meet that guy. Can somebody point him out? So
he read
what?
some articles on me.
Yes. So I see Matt walking on the compound. I'm like, holy mackerel, that's Matt Cox. So I said, I'm going to introduce myself and walk up. So I said, hey, Matt, I heard we have a lot in common.
No, wait.
And Matt's
You
like,
both-
oh my God, another.
oh yeah, and then I keep walking, right? But then you came up later. He comes up. This is the one I remember because you told me this one.
Right, because I said, hey, you know we got a lot in common,
and I
don't
just
you?
walk off.
Yeah.
So the second time, I'm leaning up against the fence, and he comes and walks over and says, leans up against the fence. He goes, "Hey, I hear we got a lot in common." I go, and same thing. I take off. Then Sheldon or whatever was the
You
white
mean-
guy had the mullet.
Was it? Oh, yeah.
Then he comes
Oh,
up to me
my
and says,
God.
"Hey, bro, I got a guy that wants to meet you." And I go, "What the fuck does that mean?" I mean, I'm ready. I'm like, "What does that mean? What do you mean you got a guy that wants to meet me?" I mean, I don't need to meet him. Like, it's like
you want to know, is the meat M-E-E-T or M-E-A-T?
Yeah,
Right.
it's bad. Like, I mean, I'm having a hard. Like at this point, I'm not talking to nobody. I'm very uncomfortable.
Understood.
And he's like, no, he's here for. He goes, he wants to talk to you. He knows who you are. He's heard about you. I'm like, what do you mean he's heard about me? Like, who's heard about me? And he goes, no, he's here for fraud. I'm like, whoa, he's here for fraud. Where is he? And he's like, he's right over there. He tried to talk to you before. He said he thinks that maybe you don't like black guys or something. Or I was like, well, I mean, I don't like guys that I think are hitting on me. That's what I don't like. I mean, what do you do? You know, I mean. So I walked over and I'm like, well, what are you doing? What are you here for? And he goes, I read some articles on you. I'm here for fraud. You're here for fraud. And I was like, what?
And the rest is history.
This is great.
And the rest is history.
Good times.
Good time. 13, 14 years ago.
Right.
And I really assumed I'd be getting out before him, and he got out before me. So
I remember that. I remember he told me, he goes, bro, I had the weirdest dream last night, and you were in it, and like you were calling me, and I was trying to push 5 so the phone call would go through, and I was at home, I was like watching TV, and I was like, like he every couple of months he would tell me some story about how I was always in prison and I was trying to call him. He's like, same thing, I couldn't get push 5, it wouldn't go through. I'm like, how come in all of your dreams where I'm in it, I'm still in prison and you're on the outside? And he goes, I mean, bro, you got 26 years. I mean, let's face it.
And I've only got 16. So
yeah, he goes, I'm getting out before you. You were wrong.
I was
about
wrong.
That. You were wrong. They underestimated me.
And so you wanted to write me, so I would have to press 5.
Yeah. I remember when I got out, I was thinking, I'm gonna find him, I'm gonna write him, and I'm gonna say, call me.
What was the reason you said you didn't write?
I was waiting till I got to a point, where I was like literally. You have to think. By the time I wanted to get out of the halfway house, so I wanted to get out of the halfway house and kind of have my shit together, like mail you some money, do something like boom, hey, I'm out, and then suddenly I got that phone call from that crazy old boxer.
Yes, that's my brother's best friend. What's his name anyway?
Glenn. Suddenly Glenn calls up, do you know a guy named Isaac Allen? And I'm like, yeah, what? I'm standing here right now. I'm like, what? Like, I was like, he shouldn't be.
Did he just buy a painting from you or something?
He's bought a few paintings from me, yeah.
Oh, yeah, he was telling me that. It's like, oh, man, I got this guy, man. He was in for fraud, too, man. I'm like, really? What's his name? Matt Cox. I'm like, what? No. Oh, I got his number, dude. It's been quite a journey, man.
Yeah. None of this shit would be in there. By the way, this whole thing about prison probably shouldn't be in there. Are we wrapping this up? Let's wrap this up. This is all bad.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah,
it's all bad.
It is all bad.
I don't know what you're doing. I don't know why you did this.
I don't either. My fault.
But yeah, yeah.
So that gets edited. So as far as my first broadcast, I mean, I guess I don't know how I did, but it was kind of an honor going over. But I'm sure if I can think of some more.
You got to think of some more scams.
Yes. I've heard of a ton, and I'm just drawing a blank. And I didn't know if you were going to bring some, but I can bring some that I thought of.
This is good amount of time.
All right. Okay. So bye. What do we say?
That's it. I'm supposed to say. So if you no.
Oh, all right, my fault.
You go. Yeah, I say. So if you like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, share the video, and leave a comment for the algorithm, and turn the bell notification on so that you get notified the next time we have Zack on and or any videos, so that you can listen to them and see ya. And that's it. No,